Tarique Mohammed, a name who changed my life, who has been one of the most extraordinary influences in my life in recent years. He has been I don't know, it's very difficult to describe him because he's really cleansed my soul. He's works with the homeless, and he's one of the tallest leaders, one of the youngest as well as the tallest leaders in this space. And he's also been an incredible activist. Apart from that, he's also the Forbes 30 under 30, also been a member of the Supreme Court committee for the urban homeless, setting up the shelters for the urban homeless. He's also a part of that. So he's done some wonderful achievements. He has also unearthed the infamous Muzaffarpur scam, in which girls between 6 to 15 were being raped and molested every single day, and he unearthed that. So he's beautiful, he's fearless, and he's absolutely extraordinary, and he's extremely charismatic. And I'm so proud to have Tariq here with us today, and I'm looking forward to talking to him. So, Tariq, you've been one of the tallest leaders in the space of destitution, beggary, and the homeless issues. I know that you were one of the brightest students when you were in your teens and you wanted to be an IAS officer. So, what made you actually change your journey and get into social sciences and towards social service? What really happened?
So I think it was one cold Delhi winter nights that changed it all for me. And I was just in my first years of undergrads, and one day I was coming back along with my friends. This was evening and cold December winters, and I saw some people sleeping on the pavements with newspapers on them. And I think it was the unusual sight of people covering themselves with newspapers that caught our attention, and we went to speak to them. It's not that we had not seen homeless people before that. We had been seeing homeless people all over, always, but never noticed them, never acknowledged their presence. This was for the first time that something struck. Oh, somebody is sleeping like this. So we went and spoke to them. And two things from that conversation that I had with people that day that really kind of started something. So one person said that when they go to sleep, they are not sure if they'll be alive the next morning. This was something very like hitting. How can someone die like that? There is no illness, there is no accident happening, there is no disaster happening. Still, you are not sure if you'll be alive next morning. Because why? Because you're sleeping in the open. And the other person shared something which I understood much later. He said many times you are sleeping next to a dead body. Course, I didn't realize the complexity of this entire thing at that time. But later, when I started working and we actually rescued people who were frozen like ice, and then I knew what he meant. So many people die while they are sleeping because they're sleeping under the sky in the open. So I think it started from there. Then I started as a volunteer at a night shelter with an organization which was working with homeless people, and I had several experiences there as part of my volunteer work at the night shelter, which kind of kept getting me more and more involved in this entire issue.
I think the kind of empathy that you have is extremely rare, and the idea that a young person can actually take up or basically dedicated his entire life towards serving others and serving the homeless. These are people who really nobody really wants to touch or nobody wants to even see. Why is it that you think you gravitated towards that, and how did that happen?
I think, see, one grows up with a lot of conditioning, and your own biases are there towards people. So, one experience I want to share from the homeless shelter where I was working as a volunteer. So, on the New Year's, I, along with my friends, we decided we'll go and celebrate the New Year with homeless people in the shelter. So, we collected money and got some food stuff and went there. And for the ease of distribution, we had made packets for the food. So while this was going on, this person gets up and says, "Can I have an extra samosa?" And we just gave him one more packet. And after the distribution was over, we were sitting at a corner having chai and just talking to the caretakers there. Then this person comes and says, "Mujhe maaf kar dijiye." And we were like, किस चीज की माफी मांग रहे हैं ये? And then he said, I asked for an extra food. But then he added, I have not eaten for 3 days because I didn't get any work. But he was feeling guilty because he assumed that one packet was meant for one person and anything extra that he asked for was someone else's share, and he was feeling guilty about it. This was like all this while you have grown up feeling, people, poor people, you're apprehensive about them being honest, and then suddenly this person sets a benchmark for personal integrity and how fair you can be to others. Personally, I've not been able to match that level of integrity and fairness. That person, in spite of being hungry for 3 days and just asking for an extra samosa, is feeling guilty about it because he feels this is not meant for me, whereas we keep doing that all the time. So I think from there, and then also I had experience where people would come, police would pick them up for if there were petty crimes happening in the neighborhood, anything. So there's a labeling that is associated with homeless people, so we see them as criminals, we see them as offenders. So it's very easy to suspect them. Now, when these people would come to me, there were also people who are drug dependents. When these people would come and talk to me, I felt I did not know how to deal with that. And that's when I decided, okay, I need to get myself trained in that. And that's how I came to TASE, underwent a course in correctional criminology and correctional administration. And uh, during my course, we had a field work in Beggar's Home, and then as an accident, when I went to Beggar's Home, because some of my young people that I was working on the streets, they had been picked up by the police under the Beggars Act, and till that point, I had no idea about Beggars Act. I didn't know anything like this existed. And when I went to Beggar's Home, what I saw was completely heartbreaking. Several hundred people were just locked up in that place, and it was as if जानवरों को बंद कर रखा है. And I till that point I felt that this is a misuse of law. I just felt that maybe some police officers are using their authority and rounding up poor people from the streets. But then I learned that actually law legitimizes such arrest. Law uh, empowers the police to take that action against people on the streets. So this was something very, very unacceptable. And to be frank, very honest, I did not know how long this will go. I just felt that this law has to go. We cannot arrest people because they are poor. Poverty cannot be a crime. So at that point of time, my only understanding and commitment to this entire thing was that this is a wrong law, this is an unfair law, this needs to go. And so started from there.
I think you've also been credited of having improved the conditions at Beggars Home uh, all over the country and set certain SOPs for that as well. Can you tell us more about what you actually saw at the Beggars Home? What are the conditions before before your intervention, before actually the changes already happened, and where things are right now? Can you just tell us what a comparative analysis in terms of what is the intervention did or what is the intervention done for the Beggars Home?
I think from uh, what we have been able to do is, if I have to say in one sentence, we have humanized these places. When people were arrested and brought to these homes, they're simply not seen for the vulnerabilities that they are living with. We just treat them as offenders, bring them to these homes, which are literally jails actually, because there's a arrest, there's a court appearance, and court sends them to these homes. But the name Beggars Home actually gives you an impression that it's some sort of a shelter or an ashram. Many people living nearby Beggar's Home feel that this is an ashram. That's the kind of misrepresentation that happens. So what we have been able to do, when I had gone there as a student when I started, uh, situation was so bad that there was no medical facilities there because people were arrested on charges of beggary. So even when they were having mental illness, on their charge sheet there was nowhere mentioned that they're patients. And so if you're not a patient, obviously you don't get any treatment. So the person with mental illness or with disability would serve the sentence. Say if the person has been sentenced for 2 years, 3 years, would live in that institution for 3 years without any treatment, and on completion of 3 years the person would be sent out. And obviously, because the illness has not been treated, the person would be roaming around in the nearby areas, will get picked up again And this time, as per the provisions of the law, the sentence would be even longer duration because he will be considered as a repeat offender. So over the years, what has in fact, when I had started, the deaths were very frequent in beggars home. In fact, I'd seen people, uh, with bones. You could see bones because the flesh had been eaten by rats. The dead bodies would be there for few days, and this was like so. आप कुछ भी करो नहीं करो, but we cannot be so cruel, we cannot be so bad to our own people. Even if it was an offense, I don't believe begging is an offense, but even if it was an offense, can we really let people suffer in that way? So I think, and I was young, I just started, I had some friends and students who were supporting, but this was too much for me also to take. So when I would come back to my hostel, I didn't know what to do seeing those kind of bodies. But thankfully we kept meeting a lot of people, we kept meeting a lot of officials who supported. Then there were staff, I think there were also people who wanted to do something, but they didn't know how to do it, or they didn't have a systemic, they didn't have a structure where they could do this. So if I'm working as an official, I had to simply implement the law, and now that's what I was doing. But in me, they had a person coming from outside who was creating this small structure which would also provide some relief to people. So a lot of people started supporting that. uh, One thing that I would just to highlight, you ask what change. I think it's the same people, the same place where every few days I would be seeing a dead body. Now for several months there are no that's happening. And even when somebody is falling ill, the caretakers, the staff of the homes will immediately come and inform Koshish team that this person needs to be taken to hospital. And so that is, I think, those people who are working there, the entire system that has become more sensitive. Of course, the law exists, arrest happens, but the ground staff, they have become sensitive. They now understand that people are not coming there are not criminals. They are just poor people who need help. So that has been a big shift. Uh, Earlier, one would see, uh, beatings as a very very common thing, and that was way of controlling, because as I said earlier, there are a large number of people with mental illness who were also brought under the beggars act and kept there. So obviously these people would do something which would trigger some kind of chaos in the barrack, and the violence was, beating was, punishment was one easy way of controlling. So we, as a student, I could think of small little ways, and fortunately those ways worked. Like for example, we decided to make mixed teams of people. So the in clients who were officially called as inmates, the beggars home staff, the constables, Koshish volunteers, everybody will get together, will make two teams, mixed teams, not them this versus this, mixed teams, and we'll play, we'll have kabaddi matches, we'll have cricket matches. So as a caretaker or as a constable, if I am playing along with another person, arrested person who's serving sentence there, now he takes wickets and we win a match. We are celebrating. We are having water from a same bucket. And when I go to the barrack in the evening, even if that person is creating some problem, I'll not hit him, because I'll feel I'll feel very awkward in meeting that person next morning in the playground. So I'll tell him aisa mat karo. So there was some basically building relations, and I think it's a it's a huge strength that human beings have, that we can build relations, we can empathize with each other, and that itself resulted in changing a lot of practices which were otherwise violent. Why would a caretaker now come and say this person has fever and needs to be taken hospital? Because he's feeling the pain for that person.
Tariq, you're just oozing of stories that are so beautiful and so heart-rending and so inspiring. It's really beautiful. And what is inspiring about Tariq is not just the fact that he's worked with the homeless. He obviously has started his life working with the homeless. He's made a, a kind of a profession or a career or whatever you call it around it. Um, but he's also shown leadership at the advocacy level, where he is also working towards repealing the laws. He's in touch with Supreme Court lawyers, and the Supreme Court has also appointed him as a member, uh, in which the Supreme Court has directed that every single district has to have shelters for the homeless. So the homeless should not be on the streets, and there should be safe shelters that should be made for them. Tariq, can you tell us a little bit more about that initiative of yours, and how you went about it, and how you actually managed to convince the court, and how where things are right now on that?
So of course the code thing is the result of larger collective effort, and there has been a petition in the Supreme Court asking for the shelters, where senior activists have filed the petition, and we are represented by a very a lawyer who himself is one of the petitioners. And of course, after the directions of the court, most states were not establishing the shelters. The progress was not as it was desired. Then we came up with strategy that, okay, let us have teams at every state that will work together with the state concerned departments and see to it that the shelters are established. So there are monitoring committees that have been now set up. I am also in a part of the one of the monitoring committee for the shelters for the urban homeless, and this committee is now acting as a, it's like a platform where, we go with certain authority, we go with a mandate that, this needs to be done, and we have a responsibility of ensuring that this is done, because then we are reporting it back to the court. So obviously this has worked very effectively, and a lot of states have responded to different state level committees, and activists are there. So the composition is that these committees have officials from the government and social workers appointed by the court, nominated by the court. So this collectively they are working to get this done. Uh, and along with this, with the beggary law, another very important development that we have been able to do with the Ministry of Social Justice, for because it's a state subject. Beggary is a state subject, it's a state law. So 24 states and some UTs have their own state legislations, but more or less they're same in the treatment towards people in criminalization. They're almost same. uh, and of course this needs to be taken out from all states. So we had been working very closely with some officials in the ministry, where we said that we need a central law which should decriminalize beggary, unless begging is done as an organized form, where somebody is using poor people to, kind of run a syndicate or a racket. Those people who are running that racket needs to be punished, and for that there are enough provisions in IPC that can be used to address that. So over the years, with lot of meetings and deliberations with the ministry, there was an acceptance that yes, there was the shift in the perspective approach that yes, these people are vulnerable who require support. And once that happens, from there it has been an easy journey, in the sense that of course implementation is an issue, but of course there has been a gradual progress. So first we piloted a intervention in Bihar, where we developed that model where without arrest, without courts, without police, we are able to showcase that yes, if given a chance, people are willing to give up on beggary, and they were engaging in livelihood. So that model was studied by the team from the ministry, and very recently they have initiated a national scheme. It's a pilot scheme for 10 states in the country as of now, where these 10 cities, and it includes most big cities like Bombay, Nagpur, Chennai, Bangalore, Ahmedabad, Lucknow, Patna, Indore, Delhi, where for the first time in a non-criminalizing way, a rehabilitation scheme is being implemented. So to see it coming this far, it's very satisfying. But I also know that people, I mean, people are still dying for just because they don't have a shelter, they don't have a protection. I mean, it's these are all preventable deaths. We talk about so much development, so many things, everything is required. But if our people are dying for a no reason at all, it's, I mean, not having a shelter is actually not a reason. When we have such huge buildings vacant and so many spaces, if we actually care about human lives, we can have 100 and more places where these people can be housed and protected.
Great. For those of you who are not aware, Tariq and his team at Koshish were also instrumental in unearthing the Muzaffarpur scam. In Muzaffarpur, there were girls between 6 and 15 who were being raped and molested every single day, and there was a big racket. And of course, the shelter was being run by a very infamous politician, and so it became a little bit of a controversial sort of flashpoint, and I believe that it affected a lot of shelters over there in Bihar as well. Uh, can you briefly take us through what really happened at Muzaffarpur, and then what was the aftermath of it?
Uh, So okay, it started. It all started with with the intent of improving the shelters and making the shelters more accountable. Also, in case organizations running those shelters required any kind of training or additional support inputs from the government, so then principal secretary asked us, we should review all the homes and see if what is happening there. And we said, but if you are we can do this only if you're also open to see that there might be inputs required from the government's end. It may not be only the organization's fault. He said, yes, absolutely, we are committed to do whatever it takes to improve these homes. So that was our brief and our understanding. And then we went on, we audited some 110 odd shelters, including child care institutions, women shelters, home for the elderly, home for people in beggary, and so on. And this became, it's I think it's still hurting, it's still disturbing. Of course, we noticed, we did a very simple thing where we decided, okay, if we have to look at the quality of lives, quality of life cannot be determined by the physical factors. It is about what is my lived experience in that place, how I am being treated as a human being, as a person who is alive. I have a need for dignity, I have a need for love, affection, and acceptance. Is that need getting fulfilled or not? So when we spoke to these children, we realized that things were really bad, and when we flagged it in our report, it was further investigated by the state police, and then of course a lot of crimes, abuse stories, it came out, and we all know about it. Finally, the people who were responsible were all convicted by a special court in Delhi. But something that still disturbs and makes me restless is how we have taken that entire audit thing. One at one level, personally, emotionally, it was very draining and also heartbreaking when kids, you would see almost every child has a burn mark or a cut mark, and that was very disturbing when you were interacting with those kids. But at some level, so there are two extremes that, if you have to see what happened after Muzaffarpur shelter case, lot of institutions underwent monitoring and evaluations, and a lot of malpractices were stopped. So as per Government of India's report, some 500 odd shelters were shut down because things were not correct. So I feel, it feels satisfying that yes, you have been able to make a difference at least in few thousand children. But what is equally disturbing is the fact that social audit is something that can ensure that this is not happening, and if it is happening, it comes to light. But unfortunately, we have still not been able to take that as a mandatory mechanism where we use it to protect our children. I don't know. It is not about I don't know how many more homes similar abuse might be happening. We would not know till we go and see them. Unfortunately, we have taken an approach where we'll wait for something to come out. Now these kind of uh, crimes will not come out on their own. We'll have to, as a state, as a society, we'll have to proactively go there, check check those places, and ensure that children are safe, that women are safe. But we are not doing that enough. So it's at times I feel, I think, we did that, we took a lot of risk for us, but it was all worth, because it was the burden of, many people tell me that, आप नहीं भी बोलते तो, but I feel the burden of not speaking what we saw would have been far more unbearable than any kind of other kind of risk that it could bring. But right now, when I see, I feel it could be happening. There could be another Muzaffarpur somewhere else in the country. We don't know. And we are not, why, I just fail to understand why states are not making social audit by an independent agency as a mandatory process to just go and, we all want our children to be safe, we all want our women to be safe, then why not adopt a most effective and efficient practice to do that?
No, I completely, absolutely agree with you, and all kudos to you that despite the political pressure, despite death threats, despite a whole lot of other pressure that was coming to you and your team, Koshish, you guys stood your ground and you guys published the report and made sure justice is delivered. And the main accused in the case of Muzaffarpur, Brajesh Thakur, is now behind bars, I believe, right?
Yes.
So that's fantastic because justice was finally delivered, and I'm sure all those young girls who were raped and molested within Muzaffarpur were, they feel in some way that justice has been done to them. And all kudos to you and your team. I think it's extraordinary work that you guys have done there. Uh, Tariq, I wanted to know if I were to ask you a simple question, if you have three demands from the government as far as the homeless issue is concerned, what would those three demands be? I mean, of course, I'm sure you have a huge laundry list there of things that are wrong in there. But if I were to ask you, what are the top three demands that you would want to make from the government, you would like to ask from the government, and what would those demands be?
Okay, so three demands which are very simple actually and have a legal standing. One is simply implement the orders of the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has asked there has to be shelters across all districts, all in the entire country. So simply implement the orders of the Supreme Court regarding the shelters for the urban homeless. One, because large number of people, homeless people, get criminalized under the beggary law for no fault of theirs. And it is also well established now with the orders of the Delhi High Court, Jammu and Kashmir High Court, and also the ministry's pilot scheme. Second demand for me would be repeal all beggary laws from the country because they are simply criminalizing the poverty and homeless people. Third would be, suppose our demands one and two are fulfilled. We have shelters all over. We have institutions for vulnerable people to be for a safe living. Then we have to actually make those institutions safe in the real sense, and for that make social audits mandatory for all childcare, especially childcare and women institutions. Make social. So my three demands would be shelters for all, decriminalization of repealing of the beggary laws, and social audit by an independent agencies for all institutions across.
Well, I hope the authorities are listening, and I hope you can reach out to the right people and the people in power who can listen to you, because this is a cause that needs to be taken up. We need to humanize, we need to visibilize these invisible people on the streets. So, more power to you, Tariq, and keep doing the wonderful work that you're doing. I wish we had hundreds of more Tariqs in India, just like you. I think it's uh, it's been a great pleasure to know you personally as well, and even to know your team, because each one of you is actually pure gold. I feel that you guys have amazing integrity, amazing commitment, and you're just so focused on what you want to do, and not just at the ground level, but at the advocacy level as well. I think it's extraordinary the kind of commitment. You're very, very inspiring to the young generation as well, and wish you all the best for all your future endeavors. And we hope to get rid of this scourge in this in the next few years through your stellar efforts and through the stakeholders who are actually helping you speak to the government and make sure that change actually happens from the top. So thank you very much for spending time with us, and it was a wonderful pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much. I really hope that people on this, we don't have people dying anymore on the streets, and it's unacceptable. Thank you so much for giving us this space to talk to you and talk to the country like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq. The nation loves you. Thank you.